In the early 1700s, Charleston, South Carolina, was one of the largest and busiest ports of the British North American colonies. They exported rice, indigo and lumber products while importing goods from Europe. Historical estimates say that some 50 to 100 merchant ships per month utilised the harbour, and when factoring in smaller coastal trading ships and fishermen, there were likely 2 to 10 vessels on average passing through the harbour per day. But that was all to stop in late May 1718. A small, heavily armed flotilla of 4 ships sailed into the mouth of the harbour, well out of sight from the town, but unavoidable for any ships sailing in or out. There they stopped and stretched their ships in a line. The flagship of the squadron was the 40-gun Queen Anne's Revenge, a former French slave ship. Commanding her was a dark-bearded man by the name of Edward Teach, more commonly known as the pirate Blackbeard. This action was Blackbeard's boldest move yet, which formed the peak of his explosive career. Join us as we discuss this moment in history called the Blockade of Charleston, 1718. Not much is known about Blackbeard's early days. His surname is generally agreed to be spelled as Teach, but it was often spelled as Thatch, Thack, Tack, or Theach. It is even possible that none of these are his real name, for it was common practice for pirates to assume a completely new identity. It is believed he hailed from Bristol, England, was an educated man who could read and write, and may have even come from a well-to-do family. There is some evidence that he earned his sea legs sailing on a privateer out of Jamaica during Queen Anne's War, sometime between 1702 and 1713. By the time Teach sailed into Charleston waters, he had been a pirate on the high seas for 2 years. He was a protégé to Benjamin Hornigold, and worked his way up the ranks with his cunning and ferocity, and he earned command of his first ship within a few months. After a string of successes, Blackbeard struck out on his own in early 1718. His former mentor Hornigold decided to take the king's pardon offered to all pirates and retire from piracy. Although Blackbeard was tempted to take the pardon as well, he was on a meteoric rise of wealth and success and wasn't ready to stop. Based in the hidden inlets of the North Carolina coast, Blackbeard terrorized the eastern seaboard, taking ships and growing his fleet and his crew. By May, he devised a plan to seize more ships without cruising about the seas. Instead, he would set a trap and wait for them to come to him. As soon as Blackbeard and his flotilla arrived at the mouth of the Charleston harbour, they captured a pilot ship. Next, they captured a large vessel headed for London with many Charleston citizens aboard. Over the course of 6 days, the pirates captured 9 more ships. Although none of this action was visible to the townsfolk soon figured out something was amiss, and the ships that were ready to set sail opted to wait. Now that the ship traffic had dwindled, Teach was eager for more spoils. He interrogated the citizens they captured from the second ship to learn what ships remained in port and what cargo they carried. During the interrogations, they learned that one of the citizens was the very wealthy and influential Samuel Wragg. With this new development, Teach decided to hold them as hostage to collect a ransom from the town. But instead of money, all they wanted was a chest of medicines. To proceed with his plan, Teach drew up a list of drugs required. 2 of his officers were to be sent into Charleston to submit their demands. One of the hostages, a Mr. Marks, was to accompany them to explain to the town government the situation. To ensure the safety of Teach's men, the remaining hostages would stay on the pirate ships. Teach explained to Mr. Marks and the hostages. If the pirates' demands were not met punctually, all hostages would be put to death and all captured ships set ablaze. Marks was given 2 days to accomplish his task. If any harm were to come to the pirates, Blackbeard would sail across the bar and burn every ship in the harbour, and, as a latter account reported, beat the town about their ears. With much anxious hand-wringing from the hostages, the 3 men departed in a small boat. Teach then sailed 6 leagues out from land, along with all the captured ships, and waited impatiently for his men to return with the medicine chest. However, 2 days went by, and his men nor the medicine chest returned. Teach furiously informed Samuel Wragg that he was not a man to toy with, and that Wragg and his fellow hostages would be immediately killed. Wragg managed to negotiate an extra day, reasoning that the trio likely ran into trouble, since it was unlikely that the town would sacrifice its good citizens over a mere chest of medicines. At the end of the next day, a small boat appeared coming out of the harbour. As it neared, Teach could see that it was a sole man, and he was neither Marks nor either of his officers, and there was no medicine chest. Instead, it was a messenger from Mr. Marks. The man said that the envoy's boat suffered a small squall as they entered the harbour, and it capsized. The 3 men swam for a small island several leagues from land. Knowing full well what a delay could mean to the hostages, the 2 pirates placed Mr. Marks on a hatch while they swam behind to push it to town. Before reaching land, the 2 swimmers were exhausted and could not continue. Luckily, they were picked up by a small fishing vessel. Marks hired a boat to continue to town and paid the fishermen to relay this message as to their delay to Blackbeard. Teach grudgingly accepted the explanation, and he gave his hostages 2 more days. But these 2 days passed, and there was still no return of his men or the medicines. Teach flew into a furious rage and vowed to avenge his men by killing every last man in Charleston. Wragg again pleaded with Teach, but he could only delay their execution until the next morning. With their lives at stake, some of the hostages proposed to guide the pirates into town, and if they did not see their envoys, they would fully support the pirates to raise the town. Teach accepted the offer, and they weighed anchor and headed towards land. As the flotilla neared the town, a boat came out to meet them. It was Mr. Marks, Teach's 2 officers, and the medicine chest. Mr. Marks explained the delay. While he was pleading his case to the governor, Teach's 2 officers walked about town. It took several hours to gather all the medicines, but when Mr. Marks was ready to return, he could not find the 2 pirates. It turns out that they had found some old drinking buddies and were carousing from house to house. A search party was sent out, and they finally found them, gloriously drunk. Since the town of Charleston came through on their part of the bargain, Teach did so for his. He released all the captives and their ships. However, he stripped not only the ships of all valuables, but he also stripped some of the well-dressed captives, sending them back half-naked. One has to wonder why all the fuss over a medicine chest, which contemporary accounts put the value between £300 to £400 sterling. The medicine chest was a tool of extreme importance aboard a ship during the age of sail. Since ships could be months at sea before the next port, they had to be self-sufficient. This required large stores of food, water, and the tools and materials for ship repairs. A ship also needed to provide its own medical treatment, as a sailing vessel was a very hazardous place, especially for one that engaged in piracy. A surgeon and a medicine chest often made the difference between dying from your wounds or recovering. The crew understood the importance of a good medicine chest on a ship. There have been accounts of crews deserting a ship when it was discovered that their medicine chest was empty. In Blackbeard's case, his growing crew must have outstripped his medicine supplies. One theory posits that what they were really after was mercurial preparations, which was used to treat syphilis. Pirates would often suffer more from brothel casualties than those from battle, and Edward Teach, a known sucker for a pretty face, and who also reportedly had as many as 13 wives scattered about, probably suffered his share of syphilis. To them, a chest of medicine would be very valuable plunder. Blackbeard subdued and humiliated the proud people of South Carolina without firing a single gun, nor was any blood shed from either pirates or victims. In response to their embarrassment, the South Carolina government passed stricter anti-piracy laws, making piracy a capital offence. They also built up a navy to defend the port of Charleston. In November of that same year, the governor himself took command of a 4-ship fleet. They sailed out to destroy other pirate ships hovering outside the harbour, apparently hoping to replicate Teach's success. In a fierce battle, the governor's force defeated the pirates and captured the notorious pirate Richard Worley. The courts of Charleston convicted and hung 49 pirates within a month, which demonstrated the determination of the populace to avenge past offences. As for Edward Teach, he would finally accept the king's pardon and settle down for a short time in Bath, North Carolina. However, Teach's thirst for savagery and plunder were too strong to resist, and he resumed his pirating ways that ultimately led to his death. But this moment in history will be visited in a future episode. Thank you for watching this moment in history. If you liked this episode, please like and subscribe.